change agents. How are y'all doing today? I am Jada Likely, founder of A Likely Transition. Now, if this is your first time clicking on my YouTube video, welcome, and I want to say thank you. Make sure that you hit that subscribe button. That way you're notified whenever I post a new video. And if you've been rocking with me since day one, I just want to say thank you so much for the support, because I definitely appreciate it that you all are on this new journey with me, okay? Now, the purpose of today's video is going to be me sharing some tips and some strategies on how to pass the licensed master level exam or the licensed clinical level exam, okay? So without further ado, we are going to get into the video, and I'm going to make sure that you all feel prepared and you feel confident for when you go and sit for your licensure exam. So let's get into it. Okay, tip number one. You need to know what your specific learning style is. You need to know if you are a auditorial learner, if you are a kinesthetic learner, or you're a visual learner. Or you could be all three. Personally, I'm all three of those things. But it is imperative that you identify what your specific learning style is, because that's going to be so instrumental on how you prepare to study and how you perform on the actual exam. Okay, so once you have identified what learning style is going to be most beneficial for you to retain the information, that is going to get you one step closer to passing this licensure exam. Because when you sit down, you're going to be very confident in yourself. You're going to be like, oh, I know this because I prepared myself and I studied this the way that I can recall this information. That's what you want to do. Tip number two, study how you plan to take the test. Y'all, I cannot emphasize this enough. It is so important that you study how you're going to actually plan to take this test. So let me tell y'all a story. I made the mistake to where I would always listen to music while I'm reading through content or answering practice questions. And I was like, wait, hold on, Jada, you can't do that, because you're not going to be able to have Fantasia or Monica playing in the background when you're actually taking this test. So I had to stop. And I had to get some discipline over myself. And I said, you know what? In order for me to be successful with passing this exam, I need to study how I'm going to actually take this exam test. So what that looked like for me is I had to be in a room where I just had very light background noise, because when you actually go and sit for that test, you're going to be in a room filled with other individuals that are taking another exam. It could be a social work exam, could be a dental exam. It's a variety of things. But nevertheless, you're going to be in a room with other individuals, and it's going to be some light background noise. So you need to be able to be comfortable with having just light background noise. And another example too, if you're studying practice questions and you are underlining or highlighting in material, you need to perform those same actions while you're actually taking the exam. Because if you try to implement something new, that could potentially cause you to become distracted, and it may cause you to have feelings of, oh, I'm not confident in myself because I'm trying something new. So it is imperative that you study how you plan to take the test. Another example is when you're actually on that test site, if you're a snacker like me, I love to snack. I love to have grapes or something while I'm studying. Cut that out, because you're not going to be able to have those items ready available while you're actually sitting there for that exam. So again, study how you plan to take the test. Tip number three. A lot of times people are like, well, how long do I actually need to plan to study for this exam? Personally, I say allow yourself 2 to 3 months to study. When you do that, you are building a consistent study schedule that's going to help you retain the information, because there's so much information that you have to review, that you have to retain. So those 2 to 3 months, award you that opportunity. That way you feel comfortable and you feel confident whenever you are presented with a scenario. You're like, oh, I studied this. I know exactly what it is. So give yourself those 2 to 3 months before you actually sit and take that social work license. Tip number 4. I say you should study both the content and expose yourself to practice questions. So when you're studying the content, you are either reading through material or you're listening to material, but either way it goes, you're going to be provided with a rationale and an explanation on why someone would use this theory, why you need to look for these key indicators when you are diagnosing a client. All of those things are going to be essential to have that background knowledge. So when you actually go and do a practice question, you have that knowledge and you're like, oh, I studied that. I know exactly what it is. You're going to be more confident in yourself because you know what the content says. So therefore, if you know what the content says, you're going to be able to answer the correct response for that scenario that's going to be presented to you. So do a combination of both, y'all. Don't just study the material and not expose yourself to practice questions, and don't just study practice questions. You need both of them to be successful in passing this licensure exam. All right, y'all. Tip number 5. So as a competent social worker, these are the things that you absolutely need to know. That way you are successful for passing the licensure exam. I would say go to the NASW website, read through the Code of Ethics. Read it from the first page all the way down to the last page. You also need to know your social work theories. You need to know who developed those theories, and you need to know those distinguishing factors that are included in those theories. Also, you should know medications, what medications are going to be used to diagnose. You need to know the changes that are made from the DSM-4 over to the DSM-5. You need to familiarize yourself with defense mechanisms. You need to know program development, program evaluation, community organization. Knowing those things is going to put you in a way better position to pass this licensure exam. As you all know, when you actually sit for that test, you have 170 questions that you are exposed to. Now, 20 of those are not graded and they do not count toward the final. You won't know what those 20 are. However, you do know that you're going to have 4 categories. You're going to have human development, you're going to have diversity and behavior, you're going to have assessment, intervention and systems, and you're going to have those professional relationships and the ethics. So out of those 4 content areas that's going to be exposed on the test, go ahead and familiarize, like I said earlier, study both content and expose yourself to those practice questions. That way, you are in a much better position to pass this social work licensure exam. All right, y'all. So let's get into some tips and some strategies on how to answer these scenario-based questions. So the very first thing that you all should focus on is the role of the social worker. So the role of the social worker, they could be inpatient, outpatient, medical, CPS, APS, whatever that role may be. Have a clear understanding of it, because that is going to dictate how you answer this scenario. The next thing you want to focus on is how long has the social worker and the client been engaged, or was this a referral? Those are things that you need to pay attention to. If it's going to be that initial session, if it's a session that's been ongoing for maybe a couple months and they have a good rapport with that client, has the client been referred to them, or are you doing a termination? Those are things that's very important to know. The next thing is going to be, what is the presenting problem? So when you have that presenting problem, you want to highlight it. You want to highlight what the role of the social worker is. And then you also want to highlight any key information that's in that scenario that's going to help you answer the question. And I will also say, highlight the question. And then once you have that, you want to use process of elimination. So read the question one time, go back, read it again, highlight all of that key information. Put yourself in a scenario if you have to and be like, okay, I'm the social worker, I'm a medical social worker, I'm meeting with this patient who's getting ready to discharge, and it's asking me, what do I do next? Or what do I do first? Or what is the best thing this social worker can do in this situation? So when you have those first, next, best questions, I want y'all to remember, first, top priority. What is the most important thing that the social worker can do given this scenario? Next, I want you to look at all of the previous actions that social worker has taken, and then you need to choose what is going to be the most appropriate thing to do next. When you see best, I want you all to remember what is the most ethical thing that I could do, because that is going to be the best thing, all right? So another example is, say you have a diagnostic question. When you have those, you want to make sure that you are paying attention to the symptoms that are being presented. You really want to focus on the duration and the frequency, because that is going to be those key distinguishers on what's going to be the most appropriate diagnosis. So for example, if you had a client who's been exhibiting symptoms for 6 months and your answers are schizophreniform, schizoid, or schizophrenia, you're going to go with schizophrenia because it's 6 months or longer. You know that because you paid attention to the duration of the symptoms. And another one, so say you had a human behavior question. With human behavior, if you see an age, focus in on that age. Pay attention to it, because that age is going to be very helpful in choosing the correct maybe theory, maybe reaction that the kid is having. Pay attention to it. I cannot stress that enough. Something that I do, I will read through the question once. I will read through the question again, and I will put myself in that situation, and I'll say, okay, Jada, what do I do? What's the presenting problem? What are the symptoms that this client is having? And then I'm going to answer, and I'm going to use that process of elimination. I'm going to strike through. I'm going to be like, oh, hold on, this is a good one, so let me hold on to this one. Or I may be like, nope, I know what this is, and I'm going to highlight it. But I'm still going to go through, and I'm going to apply that answer selection into the scenario to make sure that it makes sense and to make sure that I am choosing the correct answer. All right, so let's get into those questions to where you're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. What is this? I've never heard of it. I don't know. Don't get discouraged, y'all. Don't get discouraged. What I want you to do, flag it, move on. Flag it, move on. Whenever you have those questions to where you're like, I don't know what this is. You're stumped. You keep reading over. You're like, yeah, I don't know. Don't get discouraged. Flag it, move on. And then at the end of your test, what I want you to do, go back to all of your flagged ones, click it. When you read it, take your time reading it. You're like, okay, it could be this. Use that process of elimination. And if you had already selected an answer on your flagged ones, keep it. Unless you have a very good reason on why you should change that answer. Because 9 times out of 10, you gonna get that answer selection right just by that first one. So don't second guess yourself at all. So like I said, if you get into a question, you don't know what it is, you're gonna click flag, you're gonna move on. After you've answered all 170, you're going to review your flagged answers, and you're going to read through it carefully, process of elimination, and you are going to select the first thing that comes to your mind. And you're going to be confident about it. You're going to be like, yep, that's it. Let me go on to my next one. Okay? I do not want y'all to dwell and to have feelings of kind of discouraged. I don't want you to be discouraged just because you have those challenging questions. Because if you had never heard of it, don't know what it is, it may be one of those 20 questions. Flag it, move on. And then when you have that, pep talk yourself. Talk positive to you. Use those positive affirmations. Say things like, I am prepared. I am ready. I am going to pass. That is going to help build your confidence back up to where you go to that next question and you prepare. You in a whole different mindset of, I know what to do. I know what this is. I studied the content. I've exposed myself. I know the answer. So do not let yourself get discouraged when you see a question that you're unfamiliar with. Don't let yourself get discouraged. Next, we are going to talk about when to take a mock exam. Now, there are a variety of mock exams out here. However, I strongly suggest that you go on ASWB and you purchase that mock exam, because that mock exam is going to be very similar in style to how the actual exam will appear when you go and pass your licensure test, okay? So I say you should take that mock exam at least 2 weeks prior to your actual real test date. I say that because you want to go ahead and kind of expose yourself to that feeling of, this is how it's going to feel when I sit for a full 170 questions. And it has the timer up there for that 4 hours, so you're able to get an idea of how you're actually going to perform. You're going to get an idea of, okay, am I reading too much? Do I need to get up? Do I need to go walk out? Do I need to stretch? Do I need to go to the bathroom? You are going to prepare yourself, and you're going to go back to my second tip, right? Study how you plan to take the test. That's exactly what you're doing. So you're exposing yourself to what reality is going to be like when you actually take that exam test. So highly recommend taking the ASWB practice exam that they have. Purchase that 2 weeks prior, get an idea. I will tell you that ASWB exam does not dictate how you will perform on the actual test. So if you get something low, don't let that discourage you. Don't let that discourage you at all, because you are prepared for this, you are ready for this, and you needed that exposure piece to it. And ain't no telling what's gonna be appear on that real exam. You may get something that's, you're like, oh, I know all of this. It's all human development. You may be very confident with it. So don't let a low score deter you away and change your thought process of, I'm not ready for this exam. Okay, y'all. So this is my last little tidbit for you all on some of my tips and strategies on how you can be successful on passing your social work licensure exam on the first try. So let's imagine that you have went ahead and scheduled your test date. You're like, I'm confident, I know the material, I'm about to be a licensed social worker out here. Get ready. So what I suggest is you drive up to the test site at least 1 week prior. I say that because it's really good to familiarize yourself with your testing location. It's good to have an idea of what the parking is going to look like, what door you're going to have to answer, and then to get a really good idea of that commute time that you're going to have to travel. So that is something that I say, do that 1 week prior to your test date. That way you're building up that confidence, you're building up, you're kind of reducing that anxiety that you have. And you're going to be prepared because you're like, you know what, I've already been here. This is familiar to me. Let's go. Next, I would say when you have your test date, don't share your test date with everybody. That is too much pressure, y'all. You don't need all of that pressure. You can either keep your test date to yourself, or you could tell 1 or 2 people that are going to be very supportive of you and will not shame you. They will not be like, oh, well, you shouldn't have told me. Now you got too much pressure, because you don't need that. You don't need none of that negativity, okay? Because you're going to go in this test. You're going to pass. You are going to pass the social work licensure exam. All right. The next thing that I have for y'all is, say it is test day. You've already done all of the pre-screening that's been required with the testing agent, and you are sitting at your computer. For me, I put God in everything that I do. So what I did when I was at my actual test date at the computer, I said a prayer. And after I said my prayer, I felt a lot better. I said, you know what? My anxiety, my nerves, all of that calmed down because I know I have studied the content, I've exposed myself to practice questions, and I have been disciplined, and I am determined that I am going to obtain this pass on this piece of paper that has to be printed off, right? Okay, so those were really all of the tips that I have for you all. I want you to remember to be kind to yourself, to give yourself grace, and to talk positive to yourself. Talk positive, talk nicely when you're studying, talk nicely when you are actually on the test date. You do those things, you're going to be a social work licensed social worker, okay? That's what you're going to be. I believe in you all. I want you to believe in yourself, and I am here for support. I am here for encouragement. If you are struggling with a certain section, definitely feel free to either send me a DM on Instagram or send me an email and say, "Hey Jada, I really need help with this area." And I'm gonna say, "Okay, come on. Let's look at some things. What are the areas that you're struggling with?" And I'm gonna help you because that's what I'm here for. I want to see you all win. I want to see you all licensed. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching my video. Make sure you subscribe, and I will be posting more practice videos, or if you all need me to elaborate on some things that I talked about within this video, I can do that. Just let me know. All right. Bye, social work change agents.